Phainon, probably the DPS that has the biggest community split we have ever seen. Some think he is the coolest and most broken unit we've ever gotten, especially with how he does work, while others think he is set up for failure and will not age good and is already pretty bad. In this video, we're going to be covering multiple topics, primarily why people are afraid of his future and some bad things about him, but also talking about why he has a lot of strong things going for him. Not limited to just that, this video will cover a lot more. Starting it off with the bad. Phainon is the most unique character we have gotten in the game so far when it is from a purely kit perspective. He functions as a character who has a lot of self buffs in his kit. You really want him to be in a sustainless team to have maximum potential, and you build him up to his ult as quick as possible, and once you do ult, you get rid of your entire team and it is just Phainon and the enemies. This removes a lot of synergy with things like sub DPS such as consistent tribute follow-ups which do add up throughout the battle. It removes the damage potential that someone like Silverwolf or Cypher do provide, Cypher a bit less so because you can still rip it at the end of the ultimate, but the short answer is it does remove a lot of sub DPS synergies. A lot of teams in this game do function well as a hyper carry, but a lot of teams also do have a second DPS slash sub DPS that helps a lot, especially some of the best teams. Akron usually has someone like Silverwolf or Cypher. Beishao always has someone like Topaz, Moze, Hunt March 7th, or especially Cypher as well. Majority of the teams in this game have Tribi, who also functions as a sub DPS. Phainon can run these characters, but effectively uses them a lot worse. Another big concern about Phainon is the fact that he has so many self buffs. Due to the fact that he provides himself a bunch of attack and crit already, this diminishes the values of the buffs that someone does get from the strongest characters in the game such as Sunday, Robin, and so on, and even other characters that do buff those kind of stats, attack percent coming from Bronya, crit damage from her as well, crit damage from Sparkle, and so on. Phainon does not see as much value from these stat buffs that other characters do see, due to the fact that his base kit is already loaded to a bunch of crit, and the only way to really amplify his damage is provided through very rare buffs such as all-type rest pen and also defense ignore, which a lot of supports only provide through Eidolons. Phainon also only has defense ignore access from the signature light cone, so it is a lot harder to stack these, especially since you can't have a defense shred active on the enemies at all times, which makes it a lot harder to fully amplify his damage. Another problem that does arise for Phainon is getting him into ultimate does sort of kill his synergy with AoE buffers. While there's a lot of setups that do work to get him in ult quick enough and will overall provide the best output, AoE buffers unfortunately do not target Phainon, so they actually can't give him a stack of Core Flame to get closer to ultimate, meaning you will get your ultimate a lot slower, and in most common teams you will not be running a sustain, meaning you would be more susceptible to dying. So with all of these bad things going for Phainon, it seems like he has a pretty grim future, especially with the whole stat buffs. Him being super oversaturated on stats is never a good thing to have in this game, especially since diminishing value from Harmony characters that are so strong is a big problem. Combine it with the fact that you already want to be running him with specifically characters that can target him to get him into ultimate quicker, he does have a big limitation on that. But even with these limitations, that does not mean he ended up being weak. It would be one thing to have these big limitations and also be relatively weak in his ultimate. Thankfully, he does not have that problem. You can have very good stats on him, which is going to allow him to do really good damage from his meteors. The only real ability in his ultimate that doesn't do too much damage is the counter, especially if you don't have much investment in his team, and Phainon himself. His enhanced basic attack does very solid damage. His meteor is the best damaging output you can get. Phainon is loaded with extremely high multipliers, so all his attacks do very good damage. He can't be CC'd in his ultimate either, so he never will have a time where he's just unable to act. He gains a massive buff throughout the entire ultimate with the attack and also max HP, practically making it to where you cannot die. So once you really are able to achieve that first ultimate, that's when Phainon really gets going and he becomes probably one of the current characters to do the most damage in the game, especially with how frequently he does attack, as he gets up to 8 extra turns and he is the only one able to attack. You'll have some form of consistent DPS throughout the entire thing, whether you're using enhanced basic attack, using his counter to make enemies attack you and then do a big hit back, or especially with his meteor, which will always do good damage. While Phainon being self-loaded with buffs does seem like a debuff for teammates at the same time, it also is a buff for him. This means you are more flexible with team options to use, which is why he can utilize someone like Yukong, who is a very difficult character to use with relatively mediocre buffs, but with Phainon, it actually does end up working really well. You can use other lesser used buffers such as Sparkle, you can use lesser buffers such as Ting Yun, Outside of their specific setups, like you don't need to have Sparkle for the skill points, it's mainly just for the buffs, you don't have to have Tingyun for a D energy setup. While they are also good on that when it does come to being outside of his ultimate, he is able to just practically use any single buffer as long as you are able to get into his ultimate at a good time. So if you're missing buffers that do amplify his crit damage by a lot, or you're using one of the characters that buff crit damage the least such as Bronya, because Phainon already does supply himself with a good amount, you still will reach a relatively good amount of crit damage in battle. Same thing applies to attack percent if you have no one else supplying attack percent on the team. So if you're running something like Sunday, Chibi, Ruan Mei, these characters that really just don't provide any attack percent, he still will end up achieving a really good attack percent in his ultimate because that is just how he works. This really does allow for a lot of teammate flexibility as long as you do account for the fact that it may be a bit more difficult to get him in ultimate if you are running AoE buffers. But as long as you do have that part covered, he is able to practically use any single support in the game right now. So that's why his self buffs can be viewed as both a downside and also a buff. As once again, it can be viewed as a downside because he gets less effect from those stats as someone like a Noxa would. But at the same time, he could use other buffers that may not buff a certain stat. Let's say you have no crit damage buffs or you have no attack percent buffs. Because he does provide himself a bunch of these stats, you are able to achieve a good amount. This next topic can also both be viewed as a downside and also an upside. It is how Phainon's real potential is very much gated by early investment. Phainon faces a significant upgrade when it does come to getting his signature light cone as opposed to the second best option, upwards to over a 20% increase in damage overall, mainly due to the fact that his signature light cone does increase base speed. Phainon unfortunately does not gain the benefit of having his extra turns act quicker from external source buffs such as Ruan Mei talent or speed boots. The way the extra turns do work is they scale off his base speed, and one of the only buffs you can get for that base speed is through his light cone, providing a 12 base speed increase for free. It also provides another form of damage increase that Phainon is very deprived of, and that is defense ignore, while also giving him the ability to gain a 60% damage dealt increase throughout his entire ultimate. Having his signature light cone vs not having a signature light cone is a night and day difference from having your extra turns act quicker and potentially being able to have them all act in the first cycle, allowing you to either kill quicker or reset your ultimate quicker, and is also going to be the biggest damage jump as it does provide one of the stats that he isn't full of, being defense ignore, and also providing him a very high 60% damage dealt increase throughout his entire ultimate. Phainon's E1 also makes it to where his extra turns are able to act quicker, as it increases the base speed inheritance ratio for his extra turns to 66%, and will have an additional 1.5% increase for the ratio for every target you defeat in the battle up to a maximum of 84%. Not only that now, but when you do use your ultimate, you will gain a 50% increase to crit damage for 3 turns. So not only are you able to have your extra turns act even quicker than they normally would, in the entire ultimate, anytime you crit is going to be doing increased damage as well as you are getting a 50% increase to crit damage. The inheritance ratio is a big difference, especially with what I did mention with the base speed increase with this light cone, allowing you to get your extra turns to act quicker within the first cycle and your ultimate, potentially being the difference between having the cycle roll over, as this is one of the only 2 ways to increase the speed of his extra turns. This is something that most can universally agree upon, at least for the base speed inheritance ratio that should have been in his base kit, as without that and also without a signature light cone, it is a lot slower to get his extra turns to act, and he becomes a big action value black hole when you do not have them. Followed by his E1 is his E2, which increases his physical rest pen by 20% for the entire ultimate duration, and when you do use his meteor attack, you will gain an additional extra turn. In something like Memory of Chaos or Apocalyptic Shadow, this can net you up to 2 to 3 extra turns within one ultimate, and in Pure Fiction, that can net you up to 5 or 6. The extra turn you do get within his ultimate thanks to the E2 is a big damage increase, as this is not only giving you an extra turn to get more stacks to use your meteor quicker, or setting up a counter to do more damage as well. At the same time, you are getting a physical res pen increase, which is going to increase the damage source you do have in your ultimate by any means. Your enhanced basic attack will do more damage, your counter attack will do more damage, your meteor will do a lot more damage, and also when you do hit the final hit, that will also indeed do more damage. Phainon is a character extremely gated by his early investment. As I mentioned once again, his signature light cone provides base speed, letting his extra turns act quicker, giving him access to defense ignore, which is one of the biggest sources of a damage increase he can get, and providing a big 60% damage dealt increase. His E1 also increases the speed of his extra turns by increasing the inheritance ratio. That is able to get even more amplified for every enemy you do defeat in battle, and also gives him a 50% crit damage increase for his ultimate. Followed by that, with his E2, he increases all his damage sources in his ultimate with a 20% increase to physical respan, while also giving him the ability to get more turns within a ultimate, thanks to the fact that when you do use his meteor, you gain an additional extra turn. Whether this is a downside or an upside does depend on each player, as players who do end up going for this will get the benefits of having a lot more than a player that doesn't have it would. A lot of players may see this as a big upgrade potential and a longevity increase, such as if a character is falling off, investing in them is going to keep them up longer. So in Phainon's case, getting his Lycone, getting his early Eidolons will keep his lifespan up a lot longer than it normally would as opposed to a normal character, while others will see it as a downside where he doesn't perform that good without them. And a character that wants to have a longer lifespan should not have the need of getting their Lycone absolutely, and also having the idea of going for early Eidolons should increase their longevity to a good lifespan. So whether someone sees this as a upside or a downside is completely person dependent. A big thing to consider is Phainon is also going to be one of the characters that do get further amplified by any character releasing that does have buffs that are going to target a single person. This obviously does depend on their buffs that they do have in their kit. Are they providing Phainon with buffs that would warrant running them over someone else? But it is mainly due to the fact that Phainon gains his ultimate quicker for being targeted by an ally. So if a new character does come out anytime in the future and they have single target buffs or just an ability that does target, that is going to be synergy with Phainon, and if their buffs are good, all the better. And if they aren't as good, you want to look at it as this is a character that potentially can free up a slot on my team to put someone else on the other side. An example I'm going to use here is the upcoming 3.5 character Synergies. She isn't really a big Phainon upgrade, especially with the mess of her kit right now, but something you want to consider is she is able to provide Phainon stacks, while providing buffs that aren't the greatest but still do good. But what you want to consider is Synergies could be that character that allows you to put someone like Robin on the other side, allows you to free up Sunday for a slot. This also is player dependent because if your Phainon/Synergies pair isn't as strong enough to clear as opposed to running Sunday instead, then it'll become more of an issue. But if you are someone that has a Phainon that is able to clear and you have a very limited selection of Harmony characters that are mainly glued to your Phainon, Synergies would be that character to help you free up a slot and put one of the Harmony characters on the other side. And this applies to any future character that has the targeting buffs as I mentioned. They will be able to gain Phainon charges quick, provide him buffs to make him do more damage, and also free up slots on the team, which is a very important thing to consider considering his longevity. Similar to Acheron, who had the case of anyone inflicting debuffs or anyone that was the Hildy would be a buff to Acheron, which has provided to be true. After Acheron, we had Xiaochu, who did do debuffs and also was perfect for Acheron. We had setups with Fugue that allowed you to get more stacks for Acheron as well. Eventually, we got Cypher, who was absolutely insane for Acheron as well. There are setups where you can run a dual DPS with someone like Anaxa to inflict a bunch of debuffs. Acheron, the whole statement was the fact that she would continuously get buffed by anyone that inflicted debuffs and or was also Nihility. Same thing applies to Phainon if they are a buffer, or even someone that can activate a zone as a debuffer. As long as they have the ability to target a single ally, they will have a form of synergy with Phainon. To bring the video to a close, I'm going to give my final thoughts on what I do think. Personally, I do think Phainon is in a very good spot. He is able to utilize practically any support relatively well. His base kit is loaded with self-buffs, which is one of my problems, but also a benefit that I mentioned at the same time, which does also apply to what I do think about him. I do think it's good because this increases the team flexibility he does have, while also being a downside of making it to where he does get quicker diminishing returns. But with everything that Phainon does have as of now, I definitely do think he is a character that is set up quite well, even when his shilling period does end. Even with AoE buffers, there's a bunch of setups that you can do to get his ultimate quick. So having a Robin or having a Tribute on the team is going to be great for his damage, as long as you are able to get that ultimate, which again would be something you adapt to as a player-to-player basis. I personally am someone that can run one single target buffer and 2 AoE buffers, but that won't apply to everyone. Some other people have to run 2 and 1 AoE buffer, some have to run 3 single target buffers, while some others will have to run a sustain. But with the potential of getting up to the point where you run 3 supports, some being AoE and some being not, I definitely do think he has that high potential and a lot of flexibility on how you do want to get his ultimate. Within his ultimate, his damage overall is very, very strong. His meteor has probably the highest multiplier in the game and probably one of the most damaging skills we do have in the game. His enhanced basic attack does very, very good damage as well. My only complaint in his ultimate is his counter. His counter feels very weak even with good stacks. It doesn't do the greatest amount of damage. Sometimes and frequently the enhanced basic attack overall does more damage. The only time the counter does do good is if you have upwards from 7 stacks, or you are using it to gain more charges to get a quicker meteor. But due to the way he does work and due to the potential damage output you can do, especially that he already has the fact of being able to one-shot the 2-shot bosses that we do have in the game, I definitely do think he is going to last a lot longer than people do say. Definitely not at E0 S0, he has gated a lot with his early investments, but I do see his early investments more as a plus side, as personally I am someone who does value early investment being good. Because I always viewed it as if you are someone that wants to have your characters last a long time, early investment is something you probably and naturally would do. So the fact that Phainon has such a big increase from his Lycon, a big increase from his E1, and an exceptional increase at E2 is all very good positives because at E0 S1 he performs really good. And the further you go up for the first 1 to 2 dupes, you are going to get major increases that is going to increase his longevity by a lot. But again, not everyone is going to view it that way. So personally, I do think Phainon is going to last a lot more than people are saying. But I think at E0 S0 he's going to fall off a lot quicker because at E0 S0 right now you definitely can use him, but I think in that form it's going to last a lot less. Maybe even less than some other characters do last at E0 S0. But with his S1, that's going to significantly impact the longevity. At E1, that's going to impact longevity by a good amount. And his E2, he's probably going to be good for maybe even over a year. Which is why I think Phainon is definitely set up for being a good character, especially with the fact that, as I did mention, he is going to be able to consistently see buffs by future characters who do provide buffs or zone debuffs, as long as they do target Phainon to give him a actual charge for his core flame getting closer to ultimate, which we are not only going to see AoE buffers going forward, we are still going to get single target buffers. We got Sunday not too long ago. We're going to see more characters who provide energy, which he does get a benefit from getting an extra core flame off of. There are going to be more characters in the future that target, provide energy, and so on, or even both. So even teammate wise, while we do have a bit of a mess that is Sabidra, that doesn't mean it is all over. He's still going to get future teammates that potentially will help him. And just like Akron, who got buffed with any nihility, debuffer, or both, Phainon will get a buffer from anyone giving energy, single target buffing, or just like Akron, both. That does bring this video to a close. If you guys found this video helpful or enjoyable in any way, shape, or form, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of Star Wars content. Be sure to comment below your thoughts on Phainon if you guys are thinking similar or different or what you do have. Feel free to discuss, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.